Welcome to This Week in South Carolina in session here in Columbia at the State House, January 11th. I'm Gavin Jackson. First, I want to recap a little bit of the activity that happened on Thursday today, the last day of the first week of the 2018 legislative session. We talked to some lawmakers on the sidelines today about a bill that was supposed to see some action earlier this week, S-107, and that bill deals with the governor and lieutenant governor running on the same ticket. However, it's stalled so far because of a difference of the minds, which we'll get into later in the show. Also want to talk about capital punishment. We've seen some discussion about what to do with lethal injection and other methods in the state when it comes to state executions. We'll talk to Department of Corrections Director Brian Sterling about that. And we'll also preempt the Senate action on the governor's vetoes that will take place next Tuesday. Now let's get right into it. S-107 became a hot topic at the end of last year's session due to the time-sensitive nature of the election. House lawmakers amended the bill last April to add the study and recommendation of salaries for several constitutional officers. Now, the Senate took all that out, saying it was not related to the bill, and a conference committee was formed on the last day of session last year. The conference committee, made up of 3 House and 3 Senate lawmakers who hash out details, was scheduled to have a meeting on Wednesday, but it was canceled. Representative Merle Smith said that was due to a scheduling conflict since senators unilaterally pushed for that meeting.
Well, we're waiting on the Senate to discuss the pay issue, the lieutenant governor and the other constitutional officers in that bill. We have not reached an agreement on that yet.
We've been willing to continue talking about those things, but the problem is that they're saying that we're either getting a pay raise or we're not getting the bill. And that doesn't leave you much negotiating right now.
This is very complicated. How you're going to, we have to change a lot of election law, campaign finance laws. We have to change the presence of and the responsibility and authority of the lieutenant governor in the Senate. This is a very complex piece of legislation to kind of surgically remove the lieutenant governor from their role in the Senate, and also to make sure that the ballots are done properly, that they're ready for the overseas voters that have to be done 45 days out before an election. All this is in jeopardy.
I don't think it's catastrophic to the whole election process, and when we ask that question, if we didn't fix it, then don't we need to introduce a bill, and would it be catastrophic? And they did not say that. They said they were not prepared to say that quite yet.
I want to catch up to speed now with a couple of quotes we got from Department of Corrections Director Brian Sterling. Now, we talked to him about 2 bills that were kind of making their way through the committee process this week, but didn't really go too far, just had some hearings on them. These bills deal with shielding pharmaceutical companies that provide the state of South Carolina lethal injection drugs. Now, the state hasn't gotten these kind of drugs in the past 5 years, and therefore hasn't carried out any lethal injections in that time either. Now, the other bill that we discussed this week with lawmakers was one that would make the electric chair the only other reasonable way that an inmate could be killed in the state of South Carolina, since lethal injection isn't available. And let's see what Brian Sterling had to say about that.
Well, we've come to the General Assembly over the last several years and informed them, as the Director of Department of Correction, that we're unable to carry out lethal injections in South Carolina. So I'm glad the General Assembly is looking at this issue this time, and hopefully they'll come to a resolution. I think that would be up for the courts to decide. I think we discussed that yesterday, and that would be something that, this is a very litigious area of criminal law, and that would be something that obviously probably would be appealed. Any change to anything we do with the death penalty is probably going to be litigated. That's the second. The first thing is the shield law. The second would be the default if we cannot obtain the drugs, and that is something that I've testified to and said that we cannot obtain the drugs. We have not been able to for about 3 or 4 years now.
Since today was a short day here in the State House, I want to catch up on some activity that we saw earlier this week in the House dealing with the governor's vetoes. You might remember when lawmakers sustained a veto by the governor that would provide $5 million to rural health medical facilities dealing with AIDS and HIV testing. Now, a lot of lawmakers, specifically Democrats, were pretty frustrated by that veto being sustained. But Brian White, who's the chairman of House Ways and Means Committee, told us on the floor that day that there was a reason behind this, and that was because there was a $30 million funding shortfall because these vetoes were taken up halfway through the budget year instead of being addressed last June when the governor issued them. Let's take a look about this debate, especially as the Senate takes up these vetoes next Tuesday.
We can only spend what we have. When we wrote the budget, we wrote it and we spent money in a certain way, and the governor obviously has his prerogative to veto things, and he vetoed it. Between all of that, we fell some $30 or so million shy of being able to fund everything we wanted. And that's where we are here today. it is one of those situations that, ask you to the point that we have to be balanced. The money has to come up from somewhere. A lot of things have already been funded with non-recurring money, but there's a lot of agencies and programs that are sitting on hold waiting on their funds too. If we weren't $30-something million short, we would be talking, Todd, about basically the $4.9 million, are we going to spend it or not?
This line item has $4.9 million on it, and that $4.9 million goes to multiple things. And I know that a lot of those things may be distasteful to a lot of us. But one of the things that can't be ignored is the impact that this $4.9 million will have on the citizens of South Carolina. We have in this $4.9 million, in this line, where everything is, the HIV/AIDS program. And I don't need to tell anyone out there what HIV or AIDS stands for, because we all know it. We all know how deadly it is. We all know the impact that it has on our communities, be they Democrat, Republican, white or black, gay or straight. That HIV and AIDS is devastating for those that get it. And without this funding, the HIV and AIDS population in this state will increase dramatically.
And sticking with the House, lawmakers applauded staffer Juanita Levy for her 33 years of service to the House.
Support, and I want to recognize one special individual up on the front desk that hopefully each of y'all see and talk to every morning. If Juanita Levy would stand up, please, I'm going to embarrass you for a minute. This past Monday, she celebrated 33 years of service. Let's please recognize her for all her hard work.
Nita, I didn't know you were 33. A child bride.
That's some great news coming out of the first week of the State House here in Columbia. Now, a little bit of a preview for next week. The Senate will be discussing gubernatorial vetoes on Tuesday, but the bigger discussion will center around nuclear. Both Tuesday and Wednesday, the Senate and the House will be discussing this proposed $14.6 billion merger between SCANA and Dominion Energy. Now, both companies' CEOs will be in town talking to lawmakers, so be sure to stick with us to get the latest on what's going on with that deal. Also, stick with ETV throughout the 2018 legislative session. We provide daily recaps every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday on Palmetto Scene's Facebook page, SCETV's YouTube page, and my Twitter account @GavinJackson, all airing live at 7 p.m. I'm Gavin Jackson for SCETV in Columbia.